is using tonic herbs to deal with emotional problems like stress, depression, anxiety, and of course, as I'm saying this, another person driving by looking at the place. So hopefully they don't walk in and interrupt this video. So anyways, the best herbs for dealing with emotional problems, for dealing with these kinds of things that I'm talking about, in my experience and based on historic cultural usage and data and real life pragmatic application, number one is reishi. And if you were to only do one herb, one thing for overall emotional, mental, spiritual, psychic health, reishi would be the best thing to take. Second would be holy basil. And the holy basil in my mind is kind of like the Ayurvedic or the Indian reishi. And if you look at the data around these herbs, the historical context, the historical information, the historical cultural usage of these herbs, you can see why I'm saying what I'm saying in this video. You can see how revered, how worshipped these two herbs were. In India, Tulsi is a sacred plant. People have it in their house for protective reasons. People wear Tulsi beads around their neck for protective reasons. Reishi is called the Great Protector. Reishi, the literal word lingqi, means spirit herb or god herb or mushroom of immortality, or the list goes on and on and on. So how these herbs work is that they basically can go in and start to break up blockages and break up, deep-seated things that we're trying to press down. It somehow knows how to go in and find these things and start to break them up and loosen them up. And then they come up to the surface, kind of like, we have a glass of water and we have some things that we've just pushed down and buried at the bottom. Well, what these herbs do is kind of break open the roots, and it floats up to the surface, and then we can see it, we can deal with it, we can digest it and integrate it and move on, and it's no longer weighing us down, and we're no longer wasting the psychic energy to try to suppress it and try to keep it down. So these herbs can really work at helping to get rid of stress and anxiety and depression from a physical level, of course, based on their adaptogenic benefits at toning and balancing the nervous system, balancing the endocrine system, balancing the immune system, toning up all these physical processes. But what makes them really shine is how they can work on the non-physical processes, work on our psychology, work on our psyche, work on our beliefs, work on our thoughts, and just help us to feel better. But the most important thing to keep in mind is that these aren't mere pharmaceutical drugs. They're not a Prozac that's just going to drug you into a stupor that gives you the illusion that you're actually feeling better or doing better. Now, of course, there are situations where people need those kinds of drugs because they're in such a deep deficit, but for overall long-term real results, real tonification, real solving of the issue, the root cause of the problem, these herbs are one of the best tools. Now, to go along with that, you need a practice of meditation and some form of yoga or some physical discipline. Because these herbs are going in and breaking up blockages, breaking up hindrances in the body, you need something that can allow you to process this information. It can allow you to still your body's energy, to still your mind, and to calm things down so that these things can kind of be silted and sifted out. Because let's say, again, like our emotional state is a glass of water. If we're just moving around and shaking it and trying to calm it down through force, then the water is just going to get more perturbed, more aggravated, more agitated. But if we just are able to just set it down and let it be still, then it starts to calm down. Then all of the junk that's floating in it starts to kind of distill out and be sifted out. It's the same process for the stuff that's happening in our body, because our processes are very much analogous to how water works and how water flows, which is why so much of the spiritual religious literature is full of allegories or analogies and comparisons to water. So you need to take the herbs, of course, but you can't just sit back and think, I can do what I've always done, think what I've always thought, act in the ways that I've always acted, and talk in the ways that I've always talked, and get different results. Sure, you might feel a little bit better, you might deal with situations a little bit better, but if you really want to pull up the root and get rid of it, if you really want to pull the weed out, you can, sure, if you have a weed growing, let's say in your mind, you can pull the leaves off, pull the flowers off, whatever, but unless you get that root, you're just going to keep fighting it. But if you go and you pull out the root, it's not going to come back. So a good practice of meditation and yoga, or a qigong or tai chi or something of that nature to move the body in new ways, because it's important, because our nervous system, our mind, our consciousness isn't just here. Our nervous system, our consciousness is all through the body. So if we move in robotic, repetitive ways forever, we're going to think in robotic, repetitive ways. But if we can move the body in new ways, we can start to think and see and perceive in new ways. So the last thing that needs to be in place is a willingness and an acceptance and a process of actually allowing change to occur, of allowing yourself to let go what is old and not really helpful anymore, and to make way and to create an empty space for the new, better, more improved, happier feelings to come in. Because ultimately nature doesn't like a vacuum, and when you empty something out, it just wants to fill something back up. Which, if you go and you clean your house really well, after a period of time it's going to be filled back up again with junk, and you have to repeat the whole process. It's just how the world works. So I just had to check my notes. Lastly, to wrap this all up, these herbs, these techniques, these strategies aren't just drugs that are going to do the work for you. You have to put in the time, the energy, the effort, have the focus and the drive and the determination and the commitment to actually putting these things into play, to putting in better influences into your life, into your mind, into your emotional body, into your physical body, so that you can get to wherever it is that you want to go. So again, just to recap, taking the tonic herbs, having a meditation, a self-reflection, self-inquiry, self-reflective practice is essential. And then of course the willingness and the acceptance of change. Now for me, how I know these things work is because that's what I used, and these are the techniques that I use to let go of a lot of the emotional junk that I've been carrying around and dealing with for many years throughout basically my entire teenage, early on into my 20s. So that's using tonic herbs along with these other strategies to deal with emotional problems. If you have any questions or comments, post them below, and I'll talk to you soon.